Welcome to Beyond the 1 Meter Line, a visual essay about love, responsibility, and restraint. At first glance, it appears to be a workplace romance, but in reality, it is a story about people who choose not to cross the line between them. 100 centimeters. That is the distance between the two desks. Close enough to hear a voice. Close enough to notice a smile. Close enough to feel another person's presence. Yet in this story, that distance becomes a barrier neither of them can cross. The physical gap is small. The emotional distance feels infinite. What makes this story different? Most romance stories focus on how two people come together. This story focuses on something else, how two people keep themselves apart, not because they lack feelings, but because they have reasons to suppress them. This is not a story about unrequited love. Both characters carry feelings for each other. The tragedy comes from mutual restraint. They are not separated by misunderstanding alone. They are separated by conscious choices. The question is not whether love exists. The question is whether responsibility will allow it to survive. At the center of this story is a woman divided between two identities. She is a manager, and she is a woman in love. At 32, she carries responsibility not only for herself, but for the people around her. To pursue her feelings would risk disrupting the balance she has worked so hard to create. So she makes a painful choice. She places responsibility above desire. To understand the conflict, we must first understand the three people involved. Each character sees the situation differently. Each character acts according to a different understanding of reality. And it is this difference in perspective that creates the tragedy at the heart of the story. The protagonist understands more than anyone else. She knows her feelings, and she suspects that those feelings may be shared. The younger man believes his love is entirely one-sided. Out of respect, he refuses to cross the boundary. Meanwhile, the younger colleague sees only an opportunity. Unaware of the hidden emotions around her, she moves forward honestly. Three people, three perspectives, one unavoidable conflict. The younger colleague represents something the protagonist can no longer be. She is open with her emotions. She acts without hesitation. She pursues what she wants. In many ways, she is a reflection of the person the protagonist might have been years ago. By watching her, the protagonist is forced to confront the cost of her own restraint. While one woman waits, the other moves forward. Until this point, the story appears to be a simple emotional conflict. But beneath the surface, the protagonist is making a series of deliberate choices. Every action she takes is designed to protect something larger than herself. What follows is not a romance. It is a strategy. Everything begins with a simple question. Can I help you? When the young subordinate speaks these words, he is not addressing a manager. He is speaking to a person. For a brief moment, the protagonist is seen not as a leader, but as a woman carrying her own struggles. That moment becomes the foundation of everything that follows. Later, the same phrase appears again, but this time the direction is reversed. The protagonist uses the young man's own words while advising the younger colleague. On the surface, she appears supportive. In reality, she is testing the situation. She is encouraging another relationship while quietly removing herself from the equation. It is an act of sacrifice disguised as guidance. The final transformation comes with a single change. Can becomes may. The words are similar, but the meaning is completely different. This is no longer the language of emotional connection. It is the language of professionalism, a carefully constructed shield that allows her to hide behind her role as a manager, not because she feels nothing, but because she feels too much. This is not a rejection, and it is not an ending. The protagonist is not destroying her feelings. She is containing them. By choosing restraint, she creates distance between herself and her emotions. She buys time. She protects the workplace. and she survives another day without allowing her heart to take control.
The story does not rely on dramatic confessions or emotional speeches. Instead, it communicates through small details: a glance, a pause, a moment of hesitation. The most important emotions are often the ones left unspoken. To understand the story, we must learn to pay attention to what the characters do not say.
The visual language of the music video mirrors the emotional restraint of its characters. The camera rarely intrudes. The framing maintains distance. The spaces between people become as important as the people themselves. Even the direction of a gaze can carry more meaning than an entire conversation. The storytelling respects silence, just as the characters do.
Ironically, the greatest obstacle is not misunderstanding. It is understanding. The protagonist understands the consequences of crossing the line. The young man understands the responsibilities she carries. Because both of them understand too much, neither is willing to act. Their maturity becomes the very thing that keeps them apart.
The story ends, but its emotional movement does not. Empty meeting rooms, a notebook left behind, characters facing different directions. These are not conclusions. They are signals. The narrative quietly prepares the ground for future changes. The game has not ended. The pieces have simply been arranged for the next move.
Beyond the 1 meter line is not a story about confession. It is not a story about rejection. It is a story about restraint, a story about responsibility, and a story about people who choose to wait. Sometimes the hardest thing is not reaching out. It is choosing not to.